Hi, Aqua Roomers. Time for chapter reading. Yesterday we were reading about how Ma makes cheese. Do you remember this picture? So, Pa made a board with these little grooves in it, and it kind of goes down a little like that. So when she presses the cheese, actually she presses the curd through the hoop all of the way. The liquid runs down and collects here. But she has to press it for days and days and days to make the cheese. It's a lot of hard work. Every morning she took the new cheese out of the press and trimmed it smooth. She sewed a cloth around it and rubbed the cloth all over with fresh butter. Then she put the cheese on a shelf in the pantry. No refrigerator. They didn't need to with cheese. Every day she wiped every cheese carefully with a wet cloth, then rubbed it all over with fresh butter once more, and laid it down on its other side, flipped it over. After a great many days, the cheese was ripe, and there was a hard rind all over it. Then Ma wrapped each cheese in paper and laid it away on the high shelf. There was nothing more to do but to eat it. Laura and Mary liked cheese making. They liked to eat the curd that squeaked in their teeth, and they liked to eat the edges. So next time you have cottage cheese, those pieces, the curds, see if you can make them squeak in your teeth. Ma pared off the big, round, yellow cheeses to make them smooth before she sewed them up in a cloth. Ma laughed at them for eating green cheese. The moon is made of green cheese, some people say, she told them. The new cheese did not look like the round moon when it came up behind the trees, but it was not green. It was yellow like the moon. It's green, Ma said, because it isn't ripened yet. When it's cured and ripened, it won't be a green cheese. Is the moon really made of green cheese? Laura asked, and Ma laughed. I think people say that because it looks like a green cheese, she said. But appearances are deceiving. Then, while she wiped all the green cheeses and rubbed them with butter, she told them about the dead cold moon that is like a little world on which nothing grows. The first day Ma made cheese, Laura tasted the whey. So the whey was the liquid that came running out down the board. She tasted it without saying anything to Ma. And when Ma turned around and saw her face, Ma laughed. That night, while she was washing the supper dishes and Mary and Laura were wiping them, Ma told Pa that Laura had tasted the whey and didn't like it. Oh, you wouldn't starve to death on Ma's whey like old Grimes did on his wife's, Pa said. Laura begged him to tell her about old Grimes. So, though Pa was tired, he took his fiddle out of its box and played a song for Laura. Old Grimes is dead, that good old man, we'll never see him more. He used to wear an old gray coat all buttoned down before. Old Grimes' wife made skim milk cheese. Old Grimes, he drank the whey. There came an east wind from the west and blew old Grimes away. There you have it, said Pa. She was a mean, tight-fisted woman. If she hadn't skimmed all the milk, a little cream would have run off in the way, and old Grimes might have staggered along. And of course, it's just a fun pretend song. So there's old Grimes. He only ate the whey, and there he's getting blown away by the wind. Pretend story. But she skimmed off every bit of cream, and poor old Grimes got as thin as the wind blew him away, plumb starved to death. Then Pa looked at Ma and said, "Nobody had ever starved to death when you were around, Caroline." "Well, no," Ma said. "No, Charles, not if you were there to provide for us." Pa was pleased. It was also pleasant, the doors and the windows wide open to the summer evening, the dishes making little cheerful sounds together as Ma washed them and Mary and Laura wiped, and Pa putting away the fiddle and smiling and whistling softly to himself. After a while he said, "I'm going over to Henry's tomorrow, Caroline, to borrow his grubbing hoe. Those sprouts are getting waist high around the tree stumps in the wheat field. A man just has to keep everlasting at it, or the woods will take the place back." Early the next morning, he started to walk to Uncle Henry's, but before long he came hurrying back, hitched the horses to the wagon, threw in his axe, the 2 wash tubs, the wash boiler, all the pails, and the wooden buckets were there. "I don't know if I'll need them, Caroline," he said, "but I'd hate to want them and not have them." "Oh, what is it? What is it?" Laura asked, jumping up and down with excitement. "Pa's found a bee tree," said Ma. "Maybe he'll bring us some honey." It was noon before Pa came driving home. Laura had been watching for him, and she ran out to the wagon as soon as it stopped by the barnyard. But she could not see into it. Pa called, "Caroline, if you'll come take this pail of honey, I'll go unhitch." Ma came to the wagon disappointed, thinking it was just a pail. "Well, Charles, even a pail of honey is something." Then she looked into the wagon, threw up her hands, and Pa laughed. All the pails and buckets were heaping full of dripping golden honeycomb. Both tubs were piled full, and so was the wash boiler. Pa and Ma went back and forth, carrying 2 loaded tubs and the wash boiler and all the buckets and pails into the house. Ma heaped a plate high with the golden pieces and covered all the rest neatly with cloths. For dinner, they all had as much of the delicious honey as they could eat, and Pa told them how he found the bee tree. "I didn't take my gun," he said, "because I wasn't hunting. And now it's summer. There wasn't much danger of meeting trouble. Panthers and bears are so fat this time of year. They're lazy and good-natured. Well, I took a shortcut through the woods, and I nearly ran into a bear. I came around a clump of underbrush. There he was, not far from me across the room. He looked around at me. I guess he saw I didn't have a gun. Anyway, he didn't pay any more attention to me. He was standing at the foot of a big tree, and bees were buzzing all around him. They couldn't sting through his thick fur, and he kept brushing them away from his head with one paw. Look at that bee tree. My goodness, have you ever seen so many bees? And there's the bear putting his paw in to get the good honey. But I guess their fur is so thick that a bear can't get stung by a bee. I stood there watching him, and he put the other paw into the hole in the tree and drew it out, dripping with honey. He licked the honey off his paw and reached in for more. By that time, I had found me a club. I wanted that honey myself. So I made a great racket, banging the club against the tree and yelling. The bear was so fat and so full of honey, he just dropped on all fours and waddled off among the trees. I chased him some distance and got him going fast away from the bee tree, and then I came back for the wagon. Laura asked him how he got the honey away from the bees. "Oh, that was easy," Pa said. "I left the horses back in the woods where they wouldn't get stung. And then I chopped the tree down. I split it open." "Didn't the bees sting you, Pa?" "No," said Pa. "Bees never sting me." I've heard of that, boys and girls. There are some people that never get stung by a bee. Pa's one of them. The whole tree was hollow and filled from top to bottom with honey. The bees must have been storing honey there for years. Some of it was old and dark, but I guess I got enough good clean honey to last for a long time. Laura was sorry for the poor bees. She said, "They worked so hard, and now they won't have any honey." But Pa said there was lots of honey left for the bees, and there was another large hollow tree nearby into which they could move. He said it was time they had a clean new home. They would take the old honey he had left in the old tree, make it into fresh new honey, and store it in their new house. They would save every drop of the spilled honey and put it away, and they would have plenty of honey again long before winter came. My goodness. So now our next chapter is called Harvest. So living here in New England, harvest is in the fall. Well, early fall, late summer. So that summer is almost over, it's past. And this is really exciting. Pa's going to help Uncle Henry, but I have to tell you, you will not believe. Cousin Charlie, you won't believe what he does. So I'll read a little bit, and then we'll have more of the story tomorrow. Pa and Uncle Henry traded work. When the grain got ripe in the fields, Uncle Henry came to work with Pa, and Aunt Polly and all the cousins came to spend the day. Then Pa went to help Uncle Henry cut his grain, and Ma took Laura and Mary and Carrie to spend the day with Aunt Polly. Ma and Aunt Polly worked in the house, and all the cousins played together in the yard till dinner time. Aunt Polly's yard was a fine place to play because the tree stumps were so thick. The cousins played jumping from stump to stump without ever touching the ground. Even Laura, who was the littlest, could do this easily in places where the smallest trees had grown close together. Cousin Charlie was a big boy, going on 11 years old, and he could jump from stump to stump all over the yard. The smaller stumps he could jump 2 at a time, and he could walk on the top of the fence without being afraid. That's not very safe. Pa and Uncle Henry were out in the field cutting oats with cradles. A cradle is a sharp blade made of steel fastened to a framework of wooden slats that caught and held the stalks of grain when the blade cut them. So we'll read more about this tomorrow. There's a picture of them getting ready to cut it. It's a big adventure story. So thank you, Aqua Roomers. Great chapter reading today. See you tomorrow.